Alright, now that we've gotten our selection made pretty well here on this guitar, what we're going to do now is we're going to use Refine Edge to really fine-tune the selection. So in order to get into the Refine Edge dialog box, just simply come up to the options bar, click Refine Edge, and you'll get this nice dialog box here. And what we're going to do, I'm going to zoom back out. And by the way, I'm just doing that by using Command minus on the Mac, Control minus on the PC. And what you get inside Refine Edge is essentially a preview of the mask that you're generating here. So you can see this on a white background like you're viewing here. You can see it in mask mode, which is essentially that alpha channel that we created earlier. You can also see it on a black background. And you can also see it in the quick mask mode, which shows you how it would look in quick mask, which is also identical to how we combined the alpha channel with that RGB composite to show you how it would look as a mask as well. Now we're going to get into exactly how to use quick mask mode a little bit later in the series, but this gives you an idea of what it's going to look like had you use quick mask mode with that Rubylith overlay and things like that. So you can also see it as an active selection, which is just exactly what you were seeing earlier before you got into Refine Edge. So I'm not going to choose to do that now. I'm going to actually select to use this on a black background for now. And if I pan around in here, you can just bring your tool in here and pan around, you'll see that we've done a fairly decent job of selecting this object. Now, we do have some traces of that path that we drew earlier with the pen tool. That's totally okay. That's not messing with anything on our selection. That's just there because we didn't delete it from our paths palette earlier. So we don't have to worry about that right now. We're just worried about the edge of this selection, which is actually really good considering the amount of differences between the edges and this background here. So let's go ahead. We'll keep going up here. You notice we did select some of those portions at the top that were chrome, and we didn't do too bad of a job. There's a little bit of white area up in there that we missed, and we didn't even try these because they were getting a little bit too tricky. But for the most part, it did a fairly decent job on all of these different areas here. Now, modifying your selections is really easy inside of Refine Edge simply because of the fact that you get this live preview of exactly what you're doing here. For instance, if you wanted to increase the contrast on this, you could just go ahead and crank that up a little bit. That's just going to increase the light values and the dark values around the edges of this selection to create a more harsh edge all the way around this image. So it's taking the lighter areas and making them extremely light, the darker areas making them darker. That's why you saw a lot of that area right in there go away. For instance, if I turn that back, you'll notice a lot of those little gray areas and areas that might be a little bit faded. You see those come back when I take the contrast down. Now, smooth is also a very decent command because it'll take a lot of those aliased edges, which is going to take those and smooth out those jagged edges so that you have a more smooth selection. So if I go ahead and crank this up a little bit, you see already the edges get a little bit smoother around there. If I take it back a little bit there, you see there's some jaggedness happening right up there in the top, but smoothing those out does a really great job of just creating a nice smooth contour all the way around that image. Now, feathering is another command that a lot of people have used for a long time inside of Photoshop, and for years you just had to guesstimate as to what number you entered into the feathering amount. But now, thankfully, they have this as a visual transformation so you can actually see the amount of feathering that you're getting here. So for instance, if I wanted to feather this pretty significantly, I could push that up, and there you see the feathered edge goes out into the image a little bit. Feathering is essentially just softening the edge of the selection so that it's not as harsh between the subject matter and whatever background that you're trying to separate it from. So feathering just kind of softens it up a little bit, makes it more of a smooth transition from the masked object into the background. That comes in handy when you're blending objects into one another, not so much a good thing for when you're trying to silhouette objects as we're trying to do here. Now, the next thing you can do is contract and expand this selection. So that just means that you're going to do exactly what it says, contract it inward or expand it outward. This is pretty handy in and of itself to help kind of clean up some of those edges, get rid of some of those extra little areas of gray that you might have had there. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zoom back out all the way here just to get a better understanding of exactly what our selection looks like. And by looking at it like this, you see we've done a really decent job of selecting this guitar. So once I have everything like I need it to be here, I can go ahead then and click OK, and it jumps right back into Photoshop and gives me back my original image with my active selection all the way around it. So now that we've got our selection fine-tuned, we're ready to take this image and drag it over into another image to kind of composite it with another scene entirely.